Hey guys, and welcome to our DIY budget camper build series. As we are currently on lockdown in Spain, we wanted to put together a mini series on our DIY budget camper build. This video has been requested quite a bit lately, with a lot of people at home on lockdown and who have decided to convert their own vans.
Unfortunately, we only started filming after we built the van, so we don't have a lot of video footage. We do have photos and some small video clips which will help to show you our story. So stay tuned to find out how we converted our van into a camper van on a budget, step by step.
In this episode, we will be explaining how we insulated the van, installed the floor, windows, vents, and prepped the walls for the tongue and groove cladding.
And this absolute beast is our van. It's a 2011 Renault Master van. It's a long wheelbase. It had 265,000 kilometers on it when we bought it, and we were so excited to get this started. The van was way bigger than we thought it would be when we actually got to drive the van, and it was a little bit scary at the start, but we're so glad we picked the big van so we have so much room for activities. So this van was heavily insulated at the start because it was a fridge van. I had to take down this roof at the very start, and it was a bit of a challenge. We found that some of the beams in the van and the insulation was rotted, and some of the insulation itself was a little bit damp. So we thought we'd go back to the very start of the van and build it out ourselves to make sure we're doing a perfect job. The insulation underneath this fiberglass was two 50mm Kingspan boards. These were really well insulated, but they were a little bit damp and we wanted to start again, so they're fine to take down. We also knew that when the insulation was down, we'd eventually have to take out the white bulkhead you can see there. That was for another part of the build. Next, we realised one of the scariest things when you do a van conversion is cutting holes inside your new van. It feels like you're injuring the van, and it's so scary to do, especially because we had no DIY experience at the time, but we have to just take these steps to get our vents in and to get our windows in. So here we are measuring the van. My OCD was on overdrive here. We must have checked 100 times, but we're so glad we did because we made a perfect cut. We used our jigsaw for this. So once I measured 100 times, got my extension cable up and gotten ready with my jigsaw and the metal cutting blade, this was actually a bit of a breeze. The first thing we had to do was just drill a little hole to make sure our jigsaw would fit into the van. Then it was simply a case of just tracing the van and the lines really carefully to make our cut. One of the tips that we got when we were cutting into our van was to hold the plastic bag underneath where we were cutting. This stopped all of the metal filings from dropping into the van and potentially causing some rust down the line. Once we had the perfect square cut out for the vent, we had to file the metal edges to make sure there was nothing there that could potentially rust. We used some rust prevention paint to make sure that we didn't get any rust on the corners that we just cut into the van. And you can see once you've done that and you've stopped sweating and being terrified, you poke your head for the typical Instagram picture of look what I've just done to my new van. I'll also mention that while I was smiling here and making a funny face, my arms were shaking and I had a massive adrenaline rush. It's really satisfying to see the vent actually dropped onto the van and knowing that it fits perfectly. We used a bit of Sikaflex to attach this to the van, but later on we realised that there was some leaks when we used Sikaflex, so we don't recommend it unless a professional installs it. When we installed our windows, we had a professional do it themselves, and they had some bonding agent that they used for the windows, so we actually got this person to come back and seal the two vents which haven't leaked since. So thank you, Alan, we really appreciate all your work. We repeated the process for the vent at the back, and the van was really starting to look like a camper now from outside. We were so excited to have the vents done, but we knew that the windows were next. So we opened up to the side of the van where we were going to place our window and followed the exact same steps. We traced out a line, and it doesn't have to be perfect because the window will cover any gap that you create when you're cutting the holes in the van. We also put the rust prevention paint around the corners and filed the corners here the same as we did for the vents. We had our good friend Alan come up and put on the windows for us, and these little suction pads held the window in place while it cured. We installed two back windows as well, so again we followed the exact same process. Once we had all the stress from the windows and vents finished, the windows were in, the vents were in, we felt pretty good, we started to move on to inside the van. And one of the first things that we wanted to do was to put some wooden struts on the top of the van, on the ceiling, to make sure we could hold our insulation and have something to screw into for our ceilings. We followed the exact same process for the wall, but we'll get onto that in a second. What you can see here is called sound deadening. We really recommend this if you're going to build a van, because what it does is it takes the hollowness out of the van. If you walk up to any standard panel van like this and give it a knock, you can hear a large tin sound, which sounds a bit weird. And when you're staying inside and sleeping in this van, you want it to be as quiet as you can. Simply placing this sheet of sound deadening, even 40% covering the panel, will take out a massive amount of the vibrations and the rattling that you hear in the van. We continued this sound deadening throughout all of the van where we could, and paying particular attention to the wheel arches at the back. One of the best things about having such a big van when you're doing a van build is that you can use it to transport all of your equipment and supplies. This is some of our insulation. We can see our kingspan and also some earth wool. And something else that you realise when you build a van is you're always going to need more supplies. We did more trips back and forth to B&Q and other hardware places than we ever thought we would, but we're so glad we had all the battens, all the wood, all the insulation, and just an excuse to spend more money.
If you're liking this video so far, guys, please like it, share the video and subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost a thing, but it really helps us out. So please, please, please subscribe. Thanks guys, back to the build.
So then we moved on to our flooring. We installed this silver vapor barrier that looks like a UFO's house or something crazy like that, but basically that goes underneath on the very bottom of the van. One mistake that we did make with this van build, unfortunately, was that we left out insulation in the floor. The main reason for that was that I'm 6'2" and I could barely fit in the van as it was. We wanted to make sure we insulated the roof because heat rises, so we lost a bit of insulation on the bottom. If we were to build a van again, we'd probably add 25mm kingspan to the floor. Having said that, we do have 18mm ply underneath the floor in our van. This does have some sort of insulation, and with the vapor barrier it helps a little bit, but we can still feel a little bit of cold. One of the trickiest parts about building the van floor is thinking about the wheel arches. So what we did here was draw out a custom template of our wheel arch onto the 18mm ply. We then used our jigsaw to cut out the perfect hole. When we say perfect, this meant going in and out of the van with a heavy sheet of wood a couple of times to make sure that it was fine. As you can see, the places without wheel arch cuts were a lot easier to do, and hence the fact that we're smiling a lot. Doesn't that look fantastic? Lol. Jenny celebrated with an absolute epic dance inside the van in the front garden of our house, and we didn't care about the neighbours looking because we finally had that job done. At this stage, the basic flooring in the van is complete. Next we went on to the most amazing task, of the van build, and that was using all the insulation that we picked up in the shop. We insulated the walls as best we could with the kingspan, which is the rigid foam board, and anything that we couldn't fill in, we used earth wool. There is some debate on what's the best kind of earth wool, rock wool. Between this, we're not absolute professionals. This is what we used, and we've had absolutely no problems before, and the van is really well insulated. We used 50mm insulation board for the walls, and like I said, 25mm insulation for the roof, and that's just to give me some more height. The wooden battens that we did on the roof are the exact same process on the walls. This is again to give us something to screw into, but it can be a little bit difficult because, as you may know or may not know, van walls are not straight. You can see at the top of the van here, you have to make a few little cuts and have different pieces of wood just to try and make it work. Screwing into the van panel itself can be tricky, so we did do some pilot holes with a metal drill bit, and it allowed us to screw in with our screwdriver much easier. The earth wool, rock wool, whatever kind of wool insulation you use, this is really handy for hard to reach areas such as in the little cavities, which there are so much inside a van. You can see it poking through here, and we did our best just to fill up any gaps we could. Again, paying particular attention to sound deadening and insulation around the wheel arch. There's a lot of gaps behind there that you should fill in to stop any rattles or drafts from coming through. Once we had all of the insulation finished, we then added the same vapor barrier that we have on the floor onto the walls. That's why you can see everything looking really silver, really cool, just really strange, but it works. We also had to cut a hole out for the wheel arches like we did for the floor, but this is for the side of the wall. As you can see, the wheel arch is sticking through, but it's covered in the vapor barrier. The wood you see on the walls here is 18mm ply. This is really strong, and the reason we wanted this was because it's going to support our bed system. It's also hidden from view, so it doesn't have to be that pretty. The two holes that you see at the sides of the wood are for our electrical system and hookups to our batteries. The idea behind the vapor barrier that we know of is that it reduces condensation coming through from the outside of the van to the inside of the van. We haven't had any problems so far, so we must have done something right. And this is one of those fun moments that are pretty rare when you're building a van. I was just really happy to have the roof insulation finished as well. As you can see, there are a few pins sticking out for the insulation, and these pins are so handy. They have an adhesive back which sticks to the roof, and then you stick the pin through and it holds up your insulation. We highly recommend these, and we saw this from a legend in the van conversion YouTube world, Greg Vergo. If you haven't seen his channel, check him out. Once all the insulation was finished on the roof, we followed up with our vapor barrier onto the roof as well, making the walls and everything else all silver and funky looking. We paid extra attention to mark off where the battens were underneath the silver, so we knew exactly where we could screw in for the roof. Next up, we have a really exciting part. This is probably every van builder's favourite part of the project, and this is where we used our tongue and groove cladding. This cladding is amazing. It's really light, it looks great, it can be varnished, it can be Danish oiled, whatever you want, and it just has a great look about it. It's really easy to use because of its tongue and groove patterns, and what they recommend is to start off in the middle of the van and work your way out. This ensures that there's an even amount of tongue and groove planks across your roof. One thing I will mention is that you should look out for pre-cut holes where you're going to put your lights from. If you're going to have lights that just stick directly to the roof, you don't have to worry about it. To make these holes, I simply made a template, drilled a hole with a drill, and then used a jigsaw to create the hole. These lights are really good because they're recessed into the roof, and they're pretty thin too. If you have a hole saw attachment for your drill, we recommend using this because it'll be a little bit cleaner, but if you don't, that's okay too. These are DIY budget camper builds. If you look down through the middle of the roof, you can see some cables hanging down, and that's simply where the lights are hooked up and are going to go down into our batteries. It's pretty important to pre-plan where all of your cables and your electrical appliances are going to be inside your van. And this is part of the project that gets better and better every plank you put in. It just looks so good at this stage, and we're really excited to have some lights in the roof. It looks like a home on wheels already. Now the next picture is going to be a little bit confusing. It's going to look like we took off the boards that we've just been excited about showing you, but this is because we built our van in a backwards kind of way. What we did here, as you can see in the pictures, is that we have some wood coming up just as a basic build. This is just something that we wanted to do to make the van feel like it had walls, and we went back and added the tongue and groove cladding at the end. What I want to highlight from this picture is that we built a little step on the floor at the back of the van where our bed is going to be. This step has one purpose, and it's to raise the bed off the floor, but also to give us some storage underneath. We were also able to cut off and block off the wheel arch with this little box that we created here, making storage really easy and making sure that our storage inside the van at that stage wouldn't directly hit off or bang off the wheel arch. We then moved on to insulating the doors. We insulated the sliding door and the back two doors, and once this was finished, we covered it up with wood. It makes it look nice, and we can finish it off later with a better look.
If you have any questions on this video or any questions about our van build, please comment down below and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So that's the end of the episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned for our video next week, which will cover the bed, our table and our storage. Thank you so much again. Please like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye!
Guys, I will also mention that we are in no way, shape or form professionals. We had no idea how to build a van or to build anything at that stage when we were building the van. So this may not be the perfect way to build a van, but it works for us. We're currently off traveling in the van with no problems and loving life. So if you want to do it yourself, just go for it.